Today's topic is the extension of file handling. So whatever we were doing yesterday, we were writing plain text and strings to the file. Today we will write objects to the file. So it would be very interesting topic today. 16, file handling. Okay. And I will say we will serialize. Okay. So I'll leave this as a package. So let me know if you are able to see my paint screen. You know what is a inflatable sofa? जिसमें हम हवा भर के सोफा बना सकते हैं, है ना? सो अगर वो एक सोफा inflatable sofa in house number 1, or let's say if that the person's house, so in his room he has this sofa, and this is the entrance of that room. Now if he wants to take this sofa to his picnic, okay, he's going for a trip, okay, he wants to take that sofa. So how will he take it? Will it go in its original shape and size? And he's going on a motorcycle trip. So this is his motorcycle, his bullet. You know, people, they go on this bullet. So this is his bullet. This is his they have some sort of a carrier behind. So how will he put this sofa and take it over here? First thing first, what he will do? He will deflate it. What he will do? Deflate means remove the air. Once after air is removed, this sofa will become this much size. Correct? Now it can be put in the bike. Yes. And it can be taken. And once he goes at the picnic spot, what will he do now? He will again inflate it. And it will come to its original shape and size. Right? So when I have an object in a Java application, okay, so I have a student object having roll number as 1, S name as Virat, having percentage as 78.5. Now if you want to store this object into a file, so this is my file. Okay, some txt file it is, abc.txt. This object in its original shape and size cannot be stored into the file. It cannot be stored like this into the file. So what will we have to do? We'll have to serialize it. What we'll have to do? Serialize the object by converting it into stream of bytes, converting it into a series of bytes, series or sequence, you can say. Series, sequence, or stream. So what we'll have to do first? Convert this object into a series or sequence or byte of stream of bytes. That is called as serializing the object. It is called as. And now that serialized object, which is in the stream of bytes, binary data, it is being stored in the file, right? Now what if I want to read this again in my application? Then I'll have to do what? Unserialize. and then I can read it back into my Java application, and I'll get the original object back. Make sense? So what is the process of serializing called as? Converting an object into a stream of bytes so that it can be stored into a database, into a file, and be made persistent. What is persistent? Long lasting. So if you want to make this object data long lasting, you need to store it into a file. But the object in its original shape and size cannot be stored into the file. So we'll have to serialize the object. So here, what am I writing into the file? Characters or bytes? Characters, these are characters, these are bytes. Stream of byte. So this class which I will use to read write will be which character stream or byte stream? Will be a character stream class or a byte stream class? No? We'll be using a byte stream class to read and write. Okay, getting it? So let's start. Okay, so let me make a class. Okay, let if we have a existing class. Okay, okay, let's make a new one. No worries. Okay, so I make a new class, my student. Okay, I'm writing this on purpose. What is the class name? So integer, roll number, string, s name, and double percentage. And now write all the boilerplate code which we have for a class. There is no parent class as of now, so I'll remove the super. If I am writing up no args construct, all args constructor, I make sure I also write a no args constructor. Data is private, so I'll be needing what to access them. Yes, what do we need to access private data? Setter, getters, and also I'll have a toString. So what is the name of this class? Am I audible to everyone?
My student.
My student. Okay. Now I want to store the object of this class into a file. Okay. So I will do what to that object? If I want to store the object of that class into the file, what will I do to the object? Serialize, right? So I will say over here serialize demo. And now let me create an object of this class. Student S1 is new student. I can use the constructor. Control Shift. Okay, it is not student. It is
My student.
my student. Okay, so be careful with it. Right? Having attributes as roll number, name, and percentage. Okay. Okay. Now try to understand this. I make one more same to same class. I make one more same to same class. My student opposite of my X student. Okay. Make any name. X student. Okay. And I'm having the same to same thing. I'll have the same to same thing, whatever is there in this class. Same to same, word by word, same to same. Do you see any difference between the two classes? Do you see any difference between the two classes? Yes, no, maybe. Not at all. They both are carbon copy, word to word same. Okay. But I have made object of which class?
My student.
My student. Okay. And now I will write this into a file. Okay. So I will take string file name. Okay. And let's say which file to write into. So we had yesterday we had taken, right? So we'll write over here. So we'll write it into this file. Okay. So instead of writing file1.txt, we will say, okay, serial, okay, whatever name, serial1.txt. Okay. Now what am I going to write into this file?
Object.
Object. So I'll be using a object writer. Okay. We'll be having a what? Okay. So we'll be having what? A object writer class will be there. Okay. To write this file. So let me just check the syntaxes first. Okay. So we are writing or reading now?
Writing.
Writing. So writing bytes or writing characters.
Bytes.
So which file will I need?
File output string.
File output stream, right? So I'd say file output stream. I make object of it. Is new. And to which file is it linked with?
File.
And what am I going to write into this? Now these are prone to throwing IO exceptions, right? So now I'll try to surround it in try catch. Okay. Let's try to surround it in try catch. So let's try to do a try catch to example today. And what is it doing? What an exception is being thrown? It is trying to string that stack trace. So now what am I going to write to it? Objects, right? So for that I will have a object output stream also. What will I have? Object output stream. OOS is new because we're writing binary, right? And that will write to which file? To the FOS, which is linked to the file input stream. So far, so good, guys. These are also prone to throwing exceptions. So I'll directly take the parent exception over here then. This will catch all the exceptions, right? Okay. So this will catch all the parent exception. Now, which object do I need to write?
My student.
So I'll say OOS dot write. You see this write object method? And which object am I writing? And I'll say out object written to file. And then what will I do? I will close these FOS. Okay, so first we'll try to close the inner one, which is the inner one. FOS goes into OS, right? And OS dot close all the streams. And we are writing what? Object written to file. Correct? Simple task. Let's check if this is working. Right click, run as Java application, and it says, okay, now very important question. This I just wanted to check. So you cannot store objects of all the classes. Okay, that class should have, like, can anybody start viewing on Netflix? Those who have a digital TV or those who have a mobile they all can view movies on Netflix, or do you need to subscribe? So if there are 100 people who have a digital TV or smartphone, and only 10 of them have subscribed, have taken a subscription on Netflix, who all can watch the movies? Only 10 people. So those classes, okay, what is marker interface? No, what is interface in Java? Interface has total abstract methods. No method has an implementation. So interface will have methods which are totally abstract. How many methods are there in this?
True.
And do they have an implementation?
No.
So interface is 100% abstraction. Okay, so if I make an interface name test. So this interface test has how many abstract methods? Two. So we also have abstract interfaces. What we have? Abstract interfaces means those interfaces which do not have anything inside them. The interface itself is what? Abstract. Then what is the use of this abstract interface? These are called as marker interfaces. Called as what? And they normally end with the keyword BLE. End with the keyword such as clonable, serializable. So what are these? Marker interfaces. So can you name few marker interfaces? What are they called as? Marker interface. Okay. And few of them namely are, they normally end with the keyword clonable and serializable is few of them. So they do not have anything inside them. So if you this is the body of it, it will say abstract interface. What is the name? Clonable. Will it have any implement that will have nothing in it? Empty. So these are marker interfaces. Now what are these marker interfaces used for? Okay, they just activate a particular service. So if a person has taken a subscription, that is activated against his name. So these interfaces do not have anything in them. So what is their use? So if you wish to serialize an object of a class, that class should have taken subscription of serializable. So what should it show over here? You want to serialize object of my student. So it should say what? Implements and which one? Serializable. Control and go in click on this. You will see it has nothing. It is an abstract interface. Nothing in it. Anything is there? Then what is its job? Its job is now this class object can be serialized. This class object has now subscribed to which facility? Serializable. So earlier it was not able to. So it is saying not serializable exception. Okay, means you do not. So if I do not subscribe to Netflix and I start Netflix, what will it say? You are not subscribed, please subscribe. So to subscribe for serialization, you have to implement this interface. Do not override any method. Do I have to override any method? So whenever I implement the interface, it insists that I override its method, or else I'll become an abstract class. But will serializable ever insist me to override any method? No. Why no? Because there aren't any methods in it. Its job is just to activate a feature. So now can I serialize the object of my student class? Yes, no, maybe.
Yes, sir.
So now if I save it, now I go and run this code should run perfectly because I have activated the service. So earlier I started Netflix, it was saying cannot serialize, now it has, okay? Object written to file. Which file is the object written into? Is that file there in the ITP folder? In the ITP, right? Is it there? Not there? So do what? Right click and just refresh. And you should see. Able to see this? And see this data. Are you able to interpret this data? Yes, no, maybe. Why no? Because this is in byte. These are machine instructions. These are what? You serialize the object, right? So it is goes into what? Machine readable form. Because the object is now being serialized and now it is stored on the file. Because in its original shape and size, the object cannot be stored into the file. It has to be first done what? Serialized. And then it is stored. And now this object can be transported across a database, across a network, anywhere. And now, if I want to read this object back, I have to unserialize. Okay. Now this is the fun part. So let's make new class and say what? Unserialize demo. And just the reverse action of whatever we did in serialize. So I copy this, just the reverse action. Just the reverse action we will do. Copy this, come here. Okay, now I will not make any object because I will read this object from their database. So I'll say, I'll just make a reference, null. I'm reading from which file? Input or output now? The unserialized will input or output. This is output to a file, right? And the unserialized will read from the file. So now just change all the outputs to input. Okay. And object output to just the reverse action. Import them, Control Shift O, imported. Now what? Read or write? Read the object, right? And the object it will give you will be of which? So we'll say OIS, right? I'll change the object name OIS. Now this object will be of which class? My student, right? And which reference will point to it now? S1. Okay, you can make any reference. S2 also if you want you can use S2. Okay. And now if I want to display this object, I can directly do S2. So it will call which method? ToString method. And I have to OIS also. Correct, guys? Yes or no?
Yes.
Is prone to throwing exception. Okay, unadded exception class. Okay. Now this, try to understand this. So add it in the catch. One for IO exception and one for class not found exception. Class not found exception. Okay. So give this as E1, give this as E2. And say E1 dot print stack trace and E2 dot print stack. So this is prone to throwing a class not found exception also. Save it. Now will it work perfectly fine? Okay, let's try to run and check this if it's working fine. Run JavaScript. It fetches that details from the student and it shows me over here. So whatever I stored, I have fetched it. Okay, I have read it from a file and it now reverts back to my original object. Correct? So this is called as serialize and unserialize. So far, so good. Basic flavor understood. Now these are variations in this now. I have to understand the variations. If I, while unserializing, use X student, any problem? See, whenever a class is compiled, it is given a serial version ID. What is it given? So these objects are which class? This object is of which class? Student class. And the student class has a serial version ID. Let's say serial version ID is 1122. What is the serial version ID? So what is this object student is of which class? The S1 object which I made, the S1 object which I made over here is of which class? My student. So what is the serial version ID of that class? 1122. So when I serialize that object is stored over here. What is the serial version ID of this what is the serial version ID of the class of whose object I have stored? 1122. So when I unserialize it, it will again check. So when I unserialize it and I'm storing it into which object? My student S2. What is the serial version ID of that class? 1122. If it matches, then only it will unserialize, else it will throw an exception. It will throw an exception. Okay, invalid class exception. What will it throw? Or class cast exception. These are exceptions which it will throw. Okay, and at every compile, the serial version ID changes. Okay, now when I compiled, made this object, the serial version ID of the class was 1122. Now I go and add something in the, okay, now this X student class, does it have the same serial version ID? Does it have the same serial version ID? No. My student has a different version ID, 1122. This will have a different version ID, 3344. So when I unserialize and I say, okay, I'll unserialize in a X student object, will it allow me? Yes, no, maybe.
No,
Why no?
no, because it has different serial ID.
Serial version ID. It has a different. So whichever object you have serialized, what was the serial version ID of that class? When you unserialize, you have to unserialize the same object. The serial version ID of the serialized and unserial object should be same. Here it is different, right? Even though the content is same, even though the content is 100% same of both the classes. Now let's check if it is working. So I save, right click, run as Java application and see what it is doing. Class cast exception. What is it throwing now? Class cast exception. And I'm not able to cast it into X student. Why? Because the class version ID is different of the object which I serialized. I serialized the object of which class? My student, whose serial version ID was 1122. And when you're unserializing me, the class is different. That is 3344. It is not matching. So it will throw a class cast exception. One issue. Second issue. When I compiled this class initially, there were how many attributes in it? 3. So what was the serial version ID? 1122. Then later on, then I serialized the object, right? So when I serialize my student, what was the version ID? 1122. And there were how many attributes? 3 attributes. Now, after it is stored, I go and modify the my student and I add one more attribute. Private string gender. Okay. So I'll modify the all args constructor, right? Try to understand this concept. Modified, and I'll have to add one more setter getter for gender, and I'll have to add gender in the toString as well, correct? So when I will recompile this class, the version ID will change. Version ID will
Yes.
change. So when I save this class, it recompiles, correct? If there are no errors. So now this has a version ID of 1123. 11. So the object which was saved over here of the my student, okay? So let's say it has one more. So ये तो आपने सीरियलाइज कर दिया ना, ठीक है? तो अब इसकी तो कोई जरूरत नहीं है हमें, या फिर इसको अभी ब्लैंक कर दो, लाल, समझो. So now when I saved this object into this serial, what was the version ID? 1122. Now I have changed the class, added few more things. Now the version ID of the class is changed to 1123. Now if I unserialize into even my student, will it allow? Why no?
No. Serial ID.
So that will give me a invalid class exception. Will give me a. So if I give a different class name while unserializing, even though the content is same, will give me class cast exception. And after serializing, if my original class has been modified, and then I do the unserialize, will give me what? Invalid class exception. Let's check this out. Everything is good. Will it allow me to unserialize now? What do you think? No. Why no? Because my student has been modified and the serial version ID has changed. So let's right click, run, and check error. And any idea what the error? Invalid class exception. Getting it? So now every time so this means now whatever is my status of my student class before I serialize the object, after that I cannot change it. Once I make an object of this class and store it into a file, then afterwards can I change anything in this file? No. But I will keep on changing it as per the business requirement. So I will say on every compile, do not get a different serial version ID. I will allocate it one fixed serial version ID. So every time it changes, it will have the same serial version ID. Okay. So how do we allot that? So I have mentioned that in the documentation. Okay. So you can mention that in the class, the serial version ID. It's there in this documentation. You can read it. Okay. So what is class cast exception and invalid class exception? Okay. See, this is how you provide it. So you go to your class and what do you say? My student class will have a fixed serial version ID of 123456789 It's a long value. So when it had roll number, name, percentage, what was the serial version ID? This was, and after I change it, same. So now let's try to do it. So I save it. Now this has a fixed serial version ID. Now first let's go and serialize the object of this class. So I am made with no args. How many attributes does this have?
4.
4. So let me set them. Set the roll number to 45. Set the name to Rohit. Set the percentage to 87.5 and set the gender to male. Make sense? I save it. This is object of which class? Which I'm serializing. My student. What is the serial version UID of that class? Fix. Okay. So let's serialize it now. Right click. Run as Java application. serialized, object written over here, all good, but we cannot interpret it, right? See, you can see Rohit over here, little bit, Rohit male, right? But not entirely you can interpret it because this is in stream of bytes. Now let's unserialize it, my student object, and now if I do S2, if I run this and run as, I'll have the entire object, yes, got it. Now let me go and change the my student class and add any other attribute. Private integer matches played. It has changed, so I'll have to change the all args constructor. I'll have to add a setter only for this, and I will have to add it in toString. Then now when I recompile, will the version user ID change? Will the serial version ID change? Will be the same. And now when I come and unserialize this, will there be any problem? Because even though the class has modified, the serial version ID has been kept the same, but now it will not have the fourth attribute. That is because when I serialize it, it only had roll number, name, percentage, and gender. Matches played will not be there, so that will come from the default value. So let's now run and unserialize this. Got it? Yes, no, maybe. So the change is not impacting the class because it has a fixed serial version UID. One thing, okay. The serializable interface carries on to the parent, from the parent to the child. This also. So, okay. One more thing. Static data is not serialized. Static data is not serialized. So if in the class I have a static data, so if I have a static integer, okay, so coach name, string, right? This will be a string. Static string coach name, Gambhir. Static data is not serialized. So if I wish to invoke a static method to check the coach name, so if I write over here public void display coach name and sys out, coach name is coach name. So if I try to run this code from S2 over here now, S2 dot display coach name. Okay, this data is not serialized. So let's come again now. So let's serialize it. Will it serialize? These all will be serialized and stored in the file. This will not be serialized. So let's try it. Run as. Okay. Let's go to serialize, right? Right click, run as Java application. Written. Let's go to unserialize. Right click, run as. ठीक है, ये अनसीरियलाइज हो गया और ये जो क्लास का वेरिएबल था वही डिस्प्ले हुआ है, ये फाइल में इंसर्ट नहीं हुआ है. ठीक है, ओके. और ऐसा कोई एट्रीब्यूट जो आपको फाइल में स्टोर नहीं करना है, तो फाइल में सिर्फ व्हाट विल बी स्टोर्ड इन द फाइल, only the instance variable, only the instance variables will be stored in the file. Class variables which are of scope static will not be stored in the serialization part. Okay. If you want a variable to be instance variable but still not to be stored in the file, then you can annotate it with at transient. क्या नोट कर दो उसको, क्या कर दो उसको अनोट, एट ट्रांजिएंट अनोट कर दो. तो जब उसको एट ट्रांजिएंट कर देते हैं तो फिर ये डेटा फाइल में जाता नहीं है. ठीक है. ओके, एट नहीं लगाओ उसको, उसका एक स्पेसिफायर है ट्रांजिएंट. क्या कर दो उसको, ट्रांजिएंट लगाने से क्या हो जाएगा, ये एमपी will not be stored in the file, it will be part of the class but फाइल में जाके स्टोर नहीं होगा. तो फाइल में क्या क्या स्टोर नहीं होता है while serializing? The static data and the data marked with at transient, they are not stored in the file. So now what will it show in the file? Only the roll number, name, percentage and gender. Matches played will not be stored in the file. So let's try to check this out. So in serialize, I say s1 dot set matches played 99. Okay, 99. अब ये 99 जाके फाइल में स्टोर हुआ है क्या? नहीं हुआ है, राइट. लेट्स सेव इट, लेट्स राइट क्लिक एंड रन एज जावा एप्लीकेशन. लिख दिया ऑब्जेक्ट. अब जब इसको अनसीरियलाइज करेंगे तो देखते हैं क्या होता है. मैचेस प्लेट 0 ही आ रहा है. क्यों? क्योंकि ट्रांजिएंट डेटा सीरियलाइज नहीं होता है, तो वो फिर डिफॉल्ट वैल्यू दे देता है इंटीजर का, और स्टैटिक वेरिएबल भी नहीं स्टोर होता है. वो यहाँ से जो हमने वैल्यू दे दिया है बस वो रिफ्लेक्ट कर रहा है, फाइल में जाके सेव नहीं हो रहा है. तो फाइल में सिर्फ इंस्टेंस वेरिएबल सेव होंगे. अगर इंस्टेंस वेरिएबल को सेव नहीं करना है तो क्या लगा दो उसके आगे, ट्रांजिएंट स्पेसिफायर. ओके, मेक सेंस. ओके, इफ यू मेक द पेरेंट क्लास इंप्लीमेंट सीरियलाइजेबल, फिर आपने उसको एक्सटेंड किया, तो चाइल्ड क्लास को लगाने की जरूरत नहीं है इंप्लीमेंट सीरियलाइजेबल. इंप्लीमेंट सीरियलाइजेबल कैरी फॉरवर्ड होता है. ठीक है. सो अब ये लेट से माय स्टूडेंट है, ये बन जाता है माय मॉनिटर या माय हेड बॉय. क्या बन जाता है ये, न्यू क्लास. स्टूडेंट क्या बन गया अभी, हेड बॉय बन गया. तो किसको एक्सटेंड कर रहा है ये, एक्सटेंड्स क्या, माय स्टूडेंट. अब इसके अंदर जो भी आप चीज़ें लिखोगे, तो अब इसने क्या इनहेरिट किया है यहाँ से, ना ये तो इनहेरिट होगा नहीं, तो प्राइवेट होगा. बाकी आपको अगर ये इनहेरिट करना है तो क्या कर दो, उसको प्रोटेक्टेड कर दो, राइट. तो ये भी इनहेरिट करना नहीं है. ठीक है. अब माय स्टूडेंट को किसने इनहेरिट किया, तो माय हेड बॉय लगा के इम्प्लीमेंट्स सीरियलाइजेबल लगाने की जरूरत है नहीं. तो इम्प्लीमेंट्स अगर पेरेंट ने कर दिया है तो चाइल्ड को लगाने की जरूरत वाइस वर्सा नहीं होता है. अगर माय हेड बॉय ने बोला है इम्प्लीमेंट सीरियलाइजेबल और माय स्टूडेंट ने नहीं लगाया है तो ये अलाउड नहीं है, वो इनहेरिट हो जाएगा बट ऊपर वाले को यूज नहीं कर पाएगा. क्योंकि अगर माय हेड बॉय सेज इम्प्लीमेंट सीरियलाइजेबल, इम्प्लीमेंट्स सीरियलाइजेबल, और माय स्टूडेंट नहीं बोले, तो होगा क्या, होगा माय स्टूडेंट होगा सीरियलाइज. चाइल्ड ने बोला है पर पेरेंट ने नहीं बोला है, तो पेरेंट सीरियलाइज नहीं होगा. पेरेंट ने बोला है और चाइल्ड ने नहीं बोला है तभी भी चल जाएगा. ठीक है. एक बात ये और समझने की थी, आई विल गेटिंग व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से. So this was in context with the chapter of file handling, serializable, very important utility, and we that also includes marker interface. समझ में आ जाए तो अब मैंने एक क्लास बनाई, हैज अ रिलेशनशिप है. क्या बोलते हैं इसको? हैज अ. इनहेरिटेंस इज अ रिलेशनशिप है. इनहेरिटेंस क्या है? इज अ रिलेशनशिप. इज और हैज अ में डिफरेंस देखो कि ये क्या है, व्हीकल है. क्या है? व्हीकल है. और व्हीकल के अंदर ये कार है और ये बस है. क्या है? कार है और बस है. आप और भी लगा सकते हो, ट्रक लगा सकते हो. ओके. और कार के अंदर होता है इंजन और गियर. क्या होता है? इंजन और गियर, है ना? सो अब मैं यहाँ पर दो लाइन ड्रॉ करता हूँ, रेड और ग्रीन. तो आप मुझे बोलना रेड क्या है और ग्रीन क्या है. सिर्फ हैज अ और इज अ में बोलना, हैज अ और इज अ. आपके पास दो ही ऑप्शन है, किसको हैज अ लगाओगे और किसको इज अ लगाओगे. जल्दी बताओ. रेड क्या है?
is
इज अ. एंड हाउ विल यू रीड इट? ऊपर से नीचे क्या? ऊपर नीचे से ऊपर.
car is away.
तो बॉटम अप ना. एरो कहाँ जाएगा? इनहेरिटेंस. तो ये इनहेरिटेंस होता है. एरो कहाँ आता है इनहेरिटेंस में, याद है? ओके. और हैज अ, तो यहाँ पर इज आ गया. और हैज अ बोले तो कार हैज अ इंजन एंड कार हैज अ गियर. सो हैज अ नीचे आएगा, राइट? सो फार सो गुड. सो ऐसे ही ये इनहेरिटेंस ये हमने किया है, करेक्ट. और हैज अ क्या होता है, जैसे अभी ये स्टूडेंट है और मैंने एक एड्रेस क्लास बनाई. क्या बनाई? एड्रेस. सो एड्रेस के अंदर हम लोग ने डाल दिए उसका प्राइवेट इंटीजर, हाउस नंबर, प्राइवेट स्ट्रिंग, एरिया नेम. ओके. प्राइवेट स्ट्रिंग पिन कोड और प्राइवेट इंट पिन कोड. स्ट्रिंग कर दिया सिटी नेम और प्राइवेट इंट पिन कोड कर दिया. ठीक है. तो बाकी जो भी इसके सेटर गेटर लगाने वो लगा सकते हैं आप लोग. ठीक है. अब ये एड्रेस किसको पास करना है मुझे? स्टूडेंट को. तो इसका हम रेफरेंस यहाँ लगा देंगे. एड्रेस. ये क्या हो गया? हैज अ रिलेशनशिप. क्या हो गया? हैज अ रिलेशनशिप मीन्स स्टूडेंट हैज अ एड्रेस. और एड्रेस अपने आप में अलग क्लास है. तो अगर आप हैज अ रिलेशनशिप लगा रहे हो तो जो भी आप क्लास एज हैज अ लगाने वाले हो उसने भी क्या करना चाहिए? क्या करना चाहिए उसने? वरना वो माई स्टूडेंट को सीरियलाइज नहीं करने देगा वो. अगर आपने जो भी क्लास को हैज अ लगाया है उसने भी क्या करना चाहिए? कंपलसरी सीरियलाइज करना चाहिए. इंप्लीमेंट सीरियलाइजेबल, वरना वो माई स्टूडेंट को भी सीरियलाइज नहीं करेगा. ठीक है. तो हैज अ और इज अ में अगर पेरेंट क्लास ने कर दिया है, चाइल्ड को करने की जरूरत नहीं है. और हैज अ में जो भी क्लास को आपको हैज अ चाहिए उसने भी अलग से इंप्लीमेंट सीरियलाइजेबल बोलना चाहिए. अब ये सब चीजें मैंने इस डॉक्यूमेंट में जमा कर दी है. देख लो इसको एक बार. Serialization and deserialization in Java with example. Serialization is the mechanism of converting a state of an object into a. Deserialization is the reverse process where the byte stream is used to recreate the actual Java object in memory. ठीक है. This mechanism is used to persist the object. Persist means long lasting कर देंगे object को. ठीक है. Make the object long lasting by either storing in database file or textual file. ठीक है, और ट्रांसपोर्टिंग ओवर अ नेटवर्क वॉट एवर यू वांट टू डू. Only the objects of those classes can be serialized which are implementing the Java serialization marker interface has no data members and method. It is used to mark Java classes so that objects of that class can get certain capability. ठीक है, क्लोनेबल भी है, ये सब मार्कर इंटरफेस है. To make the Java object serializable, we implement the serializable interface. ठीक है, अब object output stream we use the write object and object input stream we use the read input. ठीक है. If a parent class has implemented serializable interface, then child class doesn't need to implement, but vice versa is not true. That is a only non-static data member, that is instance variable, are saved via serialization process. Static data and transient data members are not saved. So if you don't want to save value of a non-static data member, make it transient. तो स्टैटिक तो बाय डिफॉल्ट सेव होगा नहीं, और नॉन स्टैटिक को अगर आपको सेव नहीं करना है तो ट्रांजिएंट कर दो. कंस्ट्रक्टर इज नॉट कॉल्ड व्हेन यू डीसीरियलाइज. जब आप उसको डीसीरियलाइज करते हो, यहाँ पर कंस्ट्रक्टर कॉल नहीं होता है. तो जब यहाँ पर हम ऑब्जेक्ट को डीसीरियलाइज करते हैं तो कंस्ट्रक्टर को कॉल नहीं करता है वो. ठीक है. सीरियल वर्जन यू आई डी. The serialization runtime associates a version number with each serializable class called serial version UID, which is during deserialization verify the sender and receiver of the serialized object. Okay, if we make changes to the class even after serialization, then at deserialization it will not throw an exception. क्यों? क्योंकि आपने उसका serial version ID लिखा है. ठीक है, तो ये लिख देना ऐसा. ठीक है. क्लास कास्ट एक्सेप्शन कब आएगा? जब दोनों क्लासें अलग है. आपने ऑब्जेक्ट सेव किया है माय स्टूडेंट का और ले रहे हो एक्स स्टूडेंट का, या फिर ऑब्जेक्ट माय स्टूडेंट का सेव किया है 15 पैकेज का और अनसेज कर रहे हो माय स्टूडेंट में 14 के पैकेज की. ये दो अलग अलग क्लासेस हैं, तो क्या आएगा? क्लास कास्ट एक्सेप्शन. ठीक है. क्लास विद द सेम नेम बट डिफरेंट एट्रीब्यूट्स. ओके, और डिफरेंट पैकेज. ये आपने ब्लैंक क्लास बनाई, क्लास माय स्टूडेंट एम्प्टी है वो, अब उसमें कर रहे हो अनसेड, हो जाएगा क्या? नहीं होगा. तो क्या आएगा? क्लास. इनवैलिड क्लास कब आता है? जब आपका क्लास क्या है? मॉडिफाई हो चुका है. तो इसके लिए हम लोग क्या करते हैं? ट्रांजिएंट वेरिएबल समझ में आ गया. ट्रांजिएंट कीवर्ड कैन बी यूज्ड इन डाटा मेंबर्स ऑफ अ क्लास इन ऑर्डर टू अवॉइड देयर serialization. जैसे यूजर नेम पासवर्ड है, आपको क्लास में लग रहा है पासवर्ड टू ऑथेंटिकेशन, बट उसको डेटाबेस में सेव नहीं करना है फाइल में, तो क्या कर देंगे? इसको ट्रांजिएंट कर. ठीक है. और फिर ये एग्जांपल्स लिया है मैंने, ये फाइल में शेयर कर दूंगा तो लोग समझ में आ जाएंगे. ठीक है. देखो अभी पर्सन को कर दिया है इम्प्लीमेंट serializable, कर दिया है. फिर पर्सन को इनहेरिट कौन कर रही है? स्टूडेंट. उसको करने की जरूरत है क्या? नहीं है, तो वो अपने आप हो जाएगी. ठीक है. ओके, ऑल गुड. विद हैज अ रिलेशनशिप. तो स्टूडेंट इम्प्लीमेंट serializable. स्टूडेंट के पास क्या है? एड्रेस है, तो एड्रेस शुड ऑल्सो इम्प्लीमेंट serializable. ठीक है. इफ अ क्लास हैज अ रेफरेंस ऑफ अनदर क्लास, ऑल द रेफरेंस मस्ट बी serializable, otherwise serialization process will not perform. In such case not serializable exception will be thrown. तो एड्रेस को क्या करना पड़ेगा? क्या करना पड़ेगा? एड्रेस को इम्प्लीमेंट्स serializable करना पड़ेगा. ठीक है. Since address is not serializable, you cannot serialize the instance of student class. यहाँ पर एड्रेस था क्या serializable? तो अगर नाउ और एड्रेस किसके अंदर है? स्टूडेंट में है, बस स्टूडेंट कर रहा है serializable, तो होगा क्या? स्टूडेंट का ऑब्जेक्ट serialize नहीं होगा. देखो इसे लिखा है मैंने, since address is you cannot serialize the instance of the student class also. सही है. पूरा क्लियर समझ में आ गया? serializable बहुत ज़्यादा ही हो गया.